Take a deep breath, and let's hear a story about Clara, a young architect who found healing on the sun-drenched shores of Santorini. Clara stood at her apartment window, watching rain trickle down the glass pane. Her reflection stared back tired eyes, slumped shoulders, the weight of deadlines, and a recently broken heart visible in every feature. The architecture blueprints scattered across her desk could wait. Something inside her had finally snapped. She needed escape, but not just from work, from herself. Her fingers traced the edges of an old photograph, her mother smiling against a backdrop of whitewashed buildings and the most magnificent sunset she'd ever seen. The handwritten note on the back simply read, "Santorini, where I found peace." Clara had never traveled alone before, always surrounded by colleagues or her ex. But something about those blue domes and that infinite sea called to her soul. Within 24 hours, she had booked her ticket, packed a small suitcase, and sent a brief email to her firm requesting her first vacation in 3 years. No itinerary, no guided tours, no expectations, just Clara and an island that had once brought her mother joy during her own difficult time. The thought alone made her breathing slow, her shoulders relax slightly. The flight was long, but as the small plane approached the island, Clara's breath caught in her throat. The Aegean Sea stretched like liquid sapphire beneath her, its surface glimmering with thousands of dancing diamonds under the morning sun. The crescent-shaped island rose from the water, whitewashed buildings clinging to cliffs, like freshly fallen snow against the dark volcanic rock. Upon landing, the first thing Clara noticed was the air clean, salt-tinged, carrying hints of baking bread and blooming bougainvillea. She closed her eyes, filling her lungs completely for what felt like the first time in months. A gentle breeze caressed her face, as if the island itself were welcoming her, whispering ancient promises of healing that transcended language. Her tiny rented villa in Oya overlooked the caldera, its simple white walls and blue shutters exactly like those in her mother's photograph. The caretaker, an older woman named Eleni, with kind eyes and work-worn hands, showed her in. "This place has magic," she said in accented English, placing fresh figs and a small bottle of local wine on the table. "You will see." Clara unpacked slowly, savoring the unfamiliar luxury of unhurried time. She arranged her few belongings in the carved wooden dresser, ran her fingers along the cool plaster walls, and tested the firm but comfortable bed. Through the open window, she could hear distant conversations in Greek, the occasional clink of silverware, and waves gently lapping against the shore. As evening approached, Clara ventured onto her small private terrace. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in watercolor strokes of amber, rose, and deepening purple. Somewhere nearby, someone was playing a bouzouki, the sweet, trembling notes rising and falling like the gentle waves below her feet. She poured herself a glass of the wine Eleni had left sweet yet complex, tasting of sunshine and dark soil and something ineffably Greek. With each sip, Clara felt layers of tension melting away from her muscles, her jaw unclenching, her brow smoothing. The constant mental chatter of deadlines and heartbreak receded like an outgoing tide. That night she slept deeply for the first time in months, lulled by the sound of gentle waves and the soft breeze rustling the gauzy white curtains. Her dreams were filled with blue waters and white buildings, and somewhere in the distance, her mother's laughter. When she awoke, sunlight was streaming through the window, bathing everything in a warm, golden glow. Breakfast was served in a small courtyard garden. Outside her door, thick Greek yogurt drizzled with local honey, fresh bread still warm from the oven, and coffee so rich and fragrant it made her close her eyes in appreciation. Tiny birds hopped between the flowering vines, their cheerful songs mingling with the distant church bells that seemed to ripple across the village. Clara took her time eating, noticing how the honey coated her tongue with floral sweetness, how the bread's crust crackled between her teeth, while its inside remained pillowy soft. She traced patterns in the condensation on her water glass, feeling childlike wonder at such a simple pleasure. Maybe this is what being present feels like, she thought with a small smile. As she ventured into the village that morning, Clara found herself walking without purpose or destination, novelty for someone whose days were normally scheduled down to the minute. The narrow, winding streets invited exploration, each turn revealing new vistas. A blue dome against the cloudless sky, a courtyard filled with potted geraniums, or a sudden breathtaking view of the sea. The shopkeepers and locals she passed greeted her with warm smiles, unhurried conversations, and often small offerings, a piece of freshly made bakla, a sprig of lavender, a cool drink when the midday sun grew strongest. Clara found herself accepting these kindnesses with genuine gratitude, her usual city guardedness melting under the warmth of island hospitality. On her third day, Clara discovered a small, secluded beach accessed by a narrow path winding down the cliff face. The descent required attention, each step mindful on the ancient stones worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. The physical effort of the climb cleared her mind of everything except the next step, the next breath, the next moment of walking meditation. The beach itself was a hidden paradise of black volcanic sand that sparkled with tiny crystals catching the sunlight. Clara removed her sandals, letting the warm sand massage her feet as she walked toward the water's edge. The sea here was calm, clear as glass, revealing colorful pebbles and darting fish in the shallows that lapped gently against the shore in a soothing rhythm. Clara waded in, gasping slightly at the cool embrace of the water around her ankles, then calves, then thighs as she ventured deeper. When she finally submerged herself completely, the sensation was transcendent, the water supporting her weight, cradling her body as salt crystals caressed her skin. Floating on her back, she watched wispy clouds drift across the vast blue sky. Time seemed suspended as Clara floated, her ears underwater, hearing only the mysterious sounds of the sea distant clicks, gentle rushing, the muted melody of water moving against the shore. Her heartbeat slowed to match the rhythm of the waves. Problems that had seemed insurmountable in the city now appeared distant and small against the ancient presence of the sea. After her swim, Clara found a smooth rock warmed by the sun and settled there, letting the heat seep into her muscles, drying her skin with gentle efficiency. She closed her eyes, focusing on the sensation of sunlight on her eyelids, the taste of salt on her lips, the sound of tiny waves lapping nearby. Each inhalation filled her with the clean scent of sea and distant wildflowers. It was there, half dozing in the afternoon warmth, that Clara heard footsteps approaching on the sand. Opening her eyes, she saw an elderly local man carrying a worn wooden easel and paint box. He nodded politely to her and set up his materials a respectful distance away. Soon his brush was dancing across the canvas, capturing the light playing on the water. Curious, Clara eventually gathered her things and walked over to him, drawn by the tranquil concentration in his weathered face. "Beautiful," she said simply, gesturing to his painting. He smiled, introducing himself as Nikos, a lifelong resident who had been painting this view for 60 years. "Yet it is never the same twice," he said, his English halting but clear. They spoke quietly as he continued to paint about light and shadow, about seeing versus looking, about the patience required to truly know a place. When Clara mentioned she was an architect, his eyes brightened with interest. "You build structures, I paint them," he said. "We both try to capture how places make people feel, yes? This is the truest art." As the sun began its westward journey, Nikos packed up his supplies and invited Clara to join him for dinner at a small taverna tucked away from the tourist paths. "My daughter's place," he explained with obvious pride. "She makes food that tastes like Santorini feels." The invitation felt right, a natural extension of the peace this day had brought her. The taverna was simple blue checkered tablecloths, mismatched chairs, and strings of lights casting a warm glow over the small terrace as dusk fell. Sophia, Nikos's daughter, brought plates without menus or questions, just a knowing smile and an assurance that they would eat what was freshest. The wine came in a simple carafe made by Sophia's husband just up the hill. Each dish arrived with a story, the tomatoes grown in volcanic soil, the fish caught that morning by Sophia's brother-in-law, the cheese made from the milk of goats that grazed on mountain herbs and wildflowers. Clara ate slowly, savoring each bite, the fresh ingredients prepared simply to highlight their natural flavors rather than mask or complicate them. As they ate, more locals joined their table friends of Nikos, who welcomed Clara with the easy warmth she was coming to associate with the island. They shared stories, laughter, and more wine as the stars appeared overhead, twinkling in a display impossible to see in her light-polluted city. No one checked phones or watches. Time was measured only by enjoyment. When a local musician began playing in the corner, the atmosphere shifted to one of gentle celebration. An elderly couple rose to dance, moving together with the graceful familiarity of decades of partnership. Clara watched, mesmerized by their unhurried movements, the tender way they anticipated each other, the quiet joy radiating from them in almost visible waves. Sophia, noticing Clara's attention on the dancers, leaned over and explained they had been married for 62 years. They met right here on this island when she came to visit, just like you, she said with a knowing smile. Santorini has a way of giving people what they need, even when they don't know what that is. It reveals the truth hiding in your heart. The night deepened around them, conversations ebbing and flowing like the tides. Clara felt no need to fill silences or check the time. For the first time in years, she simply existed in the moment, neither planning for tomorrow nor rehashing yesterday's wounds. The weight that had been pressing on her chest for months began to lift. The days that followed took on a gentle rhythm of their own making. Mornings began with sunrise over the caldera, the light painting everything in hues of gold and rose that changed minute by minute. Clara started each day with a few moments of stillness on her terrace, breathing deeply, cataloging the sensations of being fully alive in this perfect moment. She spent her days exploring, sometimes with new friends, often alone, discovering hidden corners of the island that seemed to exist just for her. A tiny bookshop with volumes in a dozen languages where the owner served strong Greek coffee and discussed philosophy. A small pottery studio where an artist taught her to feel the clay responding to her hands. Clara began sketching again, something she hadn't done since architecture school, before computer programs replaced the intimacy of pencil and paper. She filled a small notebook with drawings, blue domes against perfect skies, the intricate patterns of light filtering through a grape arbor, the weathered faces of locals who carried the island's history in their eyes. Each night before sleep, she wrote down 3 moments of gratitude from her day: the taste of perfectly ripe figs eaten in the morning sunshine, the feeling of warm water washing over her tired feet after a long walk, the sound of distant music carrying on the evening breeze as she read by candlelight. These small joys accumulated like treasures, rebuilding something inside her. One afternoon, Clara revisited the beach where she had met Nikos, this time bringing her own sketching materials. As she settled onto her rock, she noticed how different everything looked through eyes no longer clouded by exhaustion and heartbreak. The colors were more vivid, the sounds clearer, the sensations more immediate and precious in their temporary nature. She drew for hours, losing track of time as her hand moved across the page, capturing not just what she saw, but what she felt in this sacred place. When she finally looked up, the sun was setting, casting long golden rays across the water and transforming the black sand into a carpet of diamonds. The beauty of it brought unexpected tears to her eyes, not of sadness but reverence. That evening, wandering through the narrow streets back to her villa, Clara happened upon a small jewelry shop tucked between two larger stores. Something in the window caught her eye, a simple pendant of blue glass in the exact shade of the Aegean Sea at midday. The shopkeeper explained it was made from sand collected from the very beach she had just left. "It's a reminder," said the old woman, placing the necklace in Clara's palm, "of the way water shapes stone, slowly but persistently, with patience, of how beauty emerges not despite difficulty, but because of it." Clara fastened it around her neck, the cool glass resting against her skin like a talisman, a physical embodiment of what this place had taught her. On her final evening, Clara joined Sophia and her family for dinner again, bringing a bottle of wine and a drawing she had made of their taverna. Sophia embraced her like a long-lost daughter, declaring the sketch would hang beside the register forever. "Now you are part of our story too," she said, pressing a wrapped package of honey and herbs into Clara's hands. The meal stretched long into the night, dishes appearing and disappearing in a gentle choreography of hospitality. There was no mention of goodbyes. Instead, they spoke of returns, of the island waiting, of doors always open. Under the canopy of stars, with the sound of the bouzouki weaving through conversations and laughter, Clara felt a completion she hadn't known was possible. Later, alone on her terrace for the last time, Clara gazed at the moon's silver path stretching across the dark water toward infinity. The breeze carried the scents that had become so familiar: jasmine and salt, grilled fish and sweet wine, sun-warmed stone and night-blooming flowers. She breathed it all in, storing these sensations to carry home with her. Clara thought of her mother, standing perhaps on this very spot years ago, finding her own peace in this ancient place. Now she understood the power of slowing down enough to actually see, to taste, to feel, to listen. The architecture of her own life had been sound, but had become cluttered with unnecessary complications, expectations, and forgotten joys. In the morning, she would pack her few belongings, tucking sketches and small treasures between layers of clothing that smelled of sunshine. She would leave the frenetic pace of her old life here on this island, taking instead the lessons of presence, patience, and perspective. Her heart, once broken, now felt spacious and strong, rebuilt with care. As sleep began to drift over her like a gentle wave, Clara smiled, realizing that this journey had never been about escaping her life, but about finding her way back to it, to its essence, its truth, its beauty. Santorini had given her what her mother's note had promised: peace, not as a destination, but as a way of being she could carry anywhere,